Good morning, everybody. Or afternoon, depending on which coast that you are on. We are grateful to everyone that's here. We're grateful for our panelists this morning. You're going to be hearing from Steve Filson from VOID, Victims of Illicit Drugs, Daniel Salter from HIDA in the Atlanta and the Carolinas, Sheriff Donahue out of Canyon County, Idaho, and Shabir Safdar, who you've heard from just moments ago, from Partnership for Safe Medicines. As we're going to talk to you today about our report on best practices to rid social media of drug trafficking. And if you're just joining us, you can hop over to Stop the Void. It's right there on the front page, and you can download a copy for yourself if you would like. So we're going to get right into it. So I'm Amy Neville, and I am the vice chair of this commission. And unfortunately, I found myself in this work after my son Alexander died in June of 2020. Long story short, Alex was a pretty typical 14-year-old, had some anxiety about the world, loved to skateboard, loved to play video games, fought with his sister. But he found his way into wanting to experiment with what he believed was oxycodone. And he reached out to a dealer on Snapchat and obtained what he believed was oxycodone, took a single pill that had enough fentanyl in it to kill 4 people, and he died. That's the short, simple story. We were very confused after that. Like, how could this happen? We thought we were prepared for these things as parents. And unfortunately, at first we thought this was a unique situation, unique to our family, but we quickly learned that this is happening all across America on a regular basis, where, parents like us are finding their kids, in their bedrooms after they've reached out to to a drug dealer on these social media, basically open air drug markets that are taking place. Just a quick example here, you'll see right here. You can see this drug seller, Sleeping Pills Direct. These pictures come from Eric Feinberg, and he sends me pictures every now and then of things that he's finding on social media, and it's not uncommon. You could create an account today and probably find yourself by the end of the day, find these pills yourself by the end of the day. So just something to keep in mind. These are the kind of topics we're going to be touching on. And at this point, I'm going to introduce you to Steve Filson, our commission chair. Take it away, Steve.
Well, thank you very much, Amy. And again, welcome to everybody on today's release of the Best Practices to Rid Social Media of Drug Trafficking document. We appreciate wholeheartedly you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. My story is much like everybody else's who's suffered the loss of a child. Jessica was 29 years old at the time of her death from fentanyl poisoning. And having met Amy and other people that are involved in our groups and our advocacy associated with education and awareness, we came across, or I become knowledgeable of the concerns associated with social media platforms and the distribution of not only illicit fentanyl, but other types of drugs through those formats. Being a retired law enforcement officer, I worked for the San Bernardino Police Department for 31 years. I was a narcotics investigator, was a homicide investigator for 11 years. And I was truly adept and knowledgeable of the process in obtaining search warrants and the requirements needed to do so. I was absolutely appalled in the experiences that I received in interviewing people as part of this document that we're publishing today, to find that there seems to be a reluctance or even a complete avoidance or in conforming to the court orders themselves. I know search warrants back in the day when I did them, I had 10 days to serve the warrant and 10 days to get a return back to the court to inform them what was seized and things such as that. I understand that in upwards of 20% of the court orders and subpoenas that are received by Snapchat, for example, are not even responded to. Again, I found that to be virtually appalling and wanted to potentially find a way in which we could remedy that situation and get to the bottom of it and try to get a little bit more compliance. Time is essential in court orders and the obtaining of evidence by law enforcement in these situations, and a lack of timing can equate to nothing but further deaths. But again, that's my opening statement. I appreciate each and every one of you being here today, and we look forward to further conversation and hopefully these social media platforms adopting our recommendations on a voluntary basis. Thank you.
Steve, would you like to point out our commission members, who our commission members are?
Oh, I'm sorry. Our commission members, again, myself, Amy Neville, Kathleen Miles, who is the Director of Analysis at the Center on Illicit Networks and Organized Crime, Mr. Shabir Safdar, of course, who has introduced himself already, who is the Executive Director for Partnerships for Safe Medicines, Daniel Salter, who is the Director of the Atlanta, Carolina High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, better known to us as HIDA, Ashley Thompson, who is out of Arizona, and she is a parent advocate and very, very aggressively involved in education and awareness in that state, and Gene Wagner, who is a former chair of the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy and former president of the Texas State Board of Pharmacy. We were so privileged to be able to get people of this caliber to assist us in the issue and provide us with their background and historical information that led us to be able to produce this document. And again, we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Steve. So really getting into it, we took a look at 7 different areas. We really thought about what do we want to know, what do we need to know, and how are we going to find out, right? So we took a look at how platforms have done it historically and how they've handled other issues like the child sexual exploitation material. And we looked at how other types of platforms handled it, like the payment processors. So ultimately, what we found is that many platforms would say, hey, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing that. But ultimately, we really have no idea what they're doing because they allow no third parties in to take a look or to audit them. We really just have to take their word for it at this point. So in short, we looked at policy. Is the platform's policy around drug sales clear? In most cases, it can be open for interpretation. You know, there's some debate around those policies and definitely that they could be better. Content monitoring and removal, is it as good as things like they've done with the child sexual exploitation material? I have a hard time saying those words. And it's just not as good for everything else that's going on these platforms. Does a platform routinely refer prohibited content to law enforcement officials? No, they don't, but we also learned at the same time that it might be very overwhelming for law enforcement if they did, or if they even had the means to do it. Does the platform comply with court authorized information requests? And again, that boils down to depending on who you ask, right? And again, we have no way to verify that. And then user reporting, how easy is it? If you've ever, I'm sure most of us have probably had an experience at this point in reporting something, it always takes a few steps. Sometimes you don't hear back, sometimes you do. And I can just give you from my personal experience when I would report something, drug dealers would start to follow the Alexander Neville Foundation on Instagram. I would report them. And most of the time, almost in every case, except one where they explicitly stated they were selling drugs, it always came back as not violating their terms of service. So I'm not really sure ultimately what that means, but it's something that needs to be addressed. Does the platform provide API access for things like parental control software? Again, it depends on the platform. Some of them do really good, or they let in other apps, parent monitoring apps, and then other platforms like Snapchat don't allow anything. However, they are going to put in sprinklings of it, if you will. But again, in my opinion, and in Steve's opinion, they don't go deep enough, and they ultimately are not keeping our kids safe, right? In 6 months, we're still going to have drug traffickers on these platforms. It does not do anything for that. Does any third party assess the claims of the platform transparency reports? And that answer is no. Again, and I'll use Snapchat as an example, they put out their transparency reports. If you actually read them, you will see that they are actually not so transparent, and there is no way to actually verify what they're saying is true. So you can find it on most platforms' websites to get that information. So that is essentially what the report covers. So when you go take a look at the website, you'll see the report and you can download it for yourself and get those pieces of information. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Daniel Salter. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Dan Salter. I'm retired from the drug enforcement after 31 years, and I've been with the high intensity drug trafficking area for the past 4. HIDA falls under the Office of National Drug Control Policy in Washington, D.C. So everything we do is funding of collated drug task force. I became involved in this project just when I heard about the topic. I thought, I got to get on board. And I'm so grateful to the Partnership for Safe Medicine invite me to participate. And I hear the stories of Amy and Steve and the loss of their loved ones. And unfortunately, they are victims of this horrible, what we're seeing almost on a daily basis with people using social media to exploit and to poison our children and people looking at it. I used to say that there's a drug cartel lurking in your medicine cabinet. And now, unfortunately, these cartels are preying on our young on social media with little or no repercussions, which I think some of the things that this committee looked at, I think if implemented, would certainly help some of the tragedies that we see out of this. Listen, there's a 737 everyday crashing of people, the amount of people on a 737 dying every day of a drug overdose. So this country doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter where you're affiliated politically. It's killing Americans like never before. Some of the things that law enforcement face during this, what we do dealing with social media is, quite frankly, they would not respond to subpoenas, or they'd wait so long that the information was stale. And it's kind of like all crimes. We need information, and we need the information returned to us sooner than what we were getting it. Sometimes it depends on what company, but most of the time they just ignore the subpoena with no real ramifications, which was not helpful. And as mentioned earlier, they were not willing to adjust some of their controls that would limit what these people are putting on the internet. We had a great discussion about what would it look like if we could limit, if we did get notified in law enforcement of the activities going on. It would be overwhelming. I believe that it would be unsustainable by local law enforcement, by federal law enforcement, and our tribal enforcement as well. It's going to come back to, obviously there will be certain instances where law enforcement can react and respond, but I think it's going to come back to these companies to shut these people off social media. Don't give them the access to sell their poison to our kids. Don't give them the emojis that they use to translate from what looks to a normal, unsuspecting parent, a friendly little emoji, which actually we know it means it's a certain type of pill, counterfeit pill they're trying to put on the internet. So I say all that to say this committee, this is a great start, but like everything else, if we don't get traction behind it and people supporting these efforts, it'll just be another report, and it's a great report, and lives depend on it. So I'm begging those participating on the call today to get involved, talk to your representatives, tell people this is not something that we should just let go unabated. And I want to thank everybody for their dedication on this committee and let me play.
Thank you very much. We are grateful to have you. All right. Next up is Sheriff Donahue. Want to go ahead and take it away?
Yes, thank you, Amy. And my thanks and appreciation also goes out to the commission. You've worked extremely hard. You've produced a tremendous document, a tremendous report that really does drill down to what the issue is. And to echo a few things that Dan just talked about, I think that are incredibly important. First of all, if people do not believe that Mexican cartels are operating in their communities, in their cities, in their counties, their boroughs, their state, they're absolutely putting their heads in the sand. They are the driving force of these drugs. The drugs we're seeing on Snapchat and Instagram and what have you. This money is so immense that their hands are in it clear up to their shoulders. And there's also, obviously, we're talking about social media, but there's also violence associated with it. with this type of maneuver or strategy by the cartels. And it's not just in the deaths of our people, the obviously children, and of course our hearts break for Steve and Amy and so many people we've met across this country, personally met, and my family including. I've lost members to fentanyl. So the problem that the sheriffs see is that while we in law enforcement are talking about it, while you all are talking about it, there are certain people who are not listening, and that's twofold. Obviously, don't want to be too political, but administrations and legislators and Congress have to get in this conversation, have to. But so do the American people. That's why this panel today is so important. The American people, the listeners to this, it's really up to the American people to stand up and say enough is enough. You see the rainbow fentanyl. You saw Chuck Schumer yesterday, I believe was maybe Sunday, speak about putting more money into ONDCP to address the rainbow fentanyl. I hope that people are seeing the danger. That fentanyl is strategically marketing to our young children. That's what it's for. That's a marketing ploy from the cartels to develop a broader consumer base and a longer lasting consumer base, those that don't die immediately. And they're prepared to accept a 20% loss initially. These are staggering things that are happening, staggering numbers. And I was just in Washington, D.C. last week, speaking to members of Congress about cracking down on social media platforms like Facebook, like TikTok, Twitter. The money behind those companies are immense, and so they're very well protected. But as has been pointed out already, for law enforcement to subpoena the information we need and wait months to get that information back, if ever, is pointless and fruitless to address those who are operating within our states or interstate. And so we are, I tell people this all the time, we are in a war, we are not winning, and the monster is truly at our doorsteps and evident by what we see in your report. And the American people, in my opinion, have to stand up and say, you social media platforms are complicit in the deaths of these children, of these adults, and enough's enough. And our congressmen have to get in the game, and because they're not immune either, and neither are their families. Just like me as a sheriff of 10 years, my family wasn't immune either. So I'll end it with that. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Sheriff, and I completely agree with you. We need to take it back. We need to take back this power from these social media companies. Thank you for saying that. All right, and last but not least, we have Shabir Safdar.
Thanks, Amy.
I'm
the head of the Partnership for Safe Medicines. We study counterfeit medicines in the United States. We've been doing it since about 2003. Can I have the next slide, please? This year, we've been studying counterfeit HIV medicines that have been made it into the US supply chain in the hands of patients, counterfeit blood thinners, the same way. But it is the spread of fake pills bought on social media that killed people that has really captured our attention. It has left behind a flood of victim families. And it is very tragic that if I want to find a victim family, I don't have to work that hard anymore. I wish I did not have that easy of a job looking for an advocate, but they're everywhere. And in fact, I can tell you, we have not announced it yet, but Maryland is I guess it's the 24th or 25th state now. This map is out of date since my team made it about a week ago. And what's happening is very interesting. This is just fake pill deaths sold through social media. This doesn't include illicit drugs sold through social media. If you were killed by heroin that had also fentanyl in it and you were poisoned to death, or cocaine or some other illicit product, it's not even on this map. So the true map of the impact of fatalities of social media is even much bigger than this. And what's interesting about the Maryland case is that it has become so routine for people to die from fake pills and other drugs bought on social media that it wasn't even a part of an announcement in Maryland. We had to dig into the court papers to actually learn that that was actually the method of sale. So that's how routine it's becoming, and it's very, very sad. And if you're wondering, oh, did the social media companies fix this and this map has been static for 6 months or a year? The answer is no. There's deaths in 2022, but they're in states that are already dark red, so we don't color anything different. Go ahead and flip to the next slide, please. So as an example of how hard it is to take these people offline, I wanted to give you an example that the PSM staff did. Back in April, we found a vendor that ran a Facebook page, because this isn't all Snapchat. And they sell fake pills, right? They sell fake pills, and their page is populated with United Postal Service shipping receipts to show that they actually sent the product to people. And they seem to be asking the individuals involved to go ahead and open them up on camera and then send them the video. But if you go now, this page is full of these, and we reported it. And an automated screening service that Facebook employs said it didn't violate the terms of service. I don't know if it actually looked at the videos, but it said we could escalate it to human review, and we did. And the human involved at Facebook said it still didn't violate the Facebook terms of service. And we were super angry and outraged, and we kept reporting it through these months over and over and over again. My staff did not ask them to do this, but they kept trying to report different photos and videos on the pages to try and get it taken down. It did not work. Go to the next slide, please, and see if you can play the video. Maybe just tab forward. Nope, that didn't work. I've always been taught that videos and presentations are a problem, so I probably should not have put one in this one. You can actually go to Melissa Pills 420 on Facebook. It's still up, at least it was as of a day or two ago, and you can play these videos yourself. This is someone opening their U.S. Postal Service package, opening up a deck of cards, and then showing the pills inside. And they post these brazenly on the website. Go ahead to the next slide. Well, excitedly, we actually thought something was changing, and what they did was they actually made a whole new page, leaving the old one up with a Z on the end of it, and they have now continued to sell their product. And Facebook, as you can see on the left side, is suggesting some helpful questions you can ask them through Facebook Messenger, like what products are popular right now? What forms of payment do you accept? I'm absolutely appalled that even after we did our videos, that someone in Facebook's PR team, who we tweeted at and emailed, didn't think that they might take the time to take this down, that it might make them look bad. But these people still operate openly on Facebook. The last thing I want to say is that I was super happy to be a part of this commission. Steve and Amy are the right people to lead it. It was amazing getting to talk to people. I got to talk to a woman who is an expert in how the cartels in Mexico use social media. That for me was a high point. That was really a trip. I loved that interview. And what I see in the commission's report is that we now have a platform for two important things. The first of which is to tell Congress the kind of legislation we need, right? This is what you need to change. And this is what you need to fix about what's happening in order to actually rid social media of drug trafficking. And the second, which I'm also excited about, is this is now a platform and a rubric by which different platforms can be graded, right? This vendor, Melissa 420 Pills, has now shifted to doing their orders via Telegram. And when people talk about the dangers of social media, they don't tend to think about these messaging services like Telegram, but they need to obey all the same best practices we've outlined in the report. And I'm super excited that there's now a report card format that can be used to go to every one of these platforms and tell them where they're falling short, and hope that they actually voluntarily do the right thing, while simultaneously perhaps legislators might figure out how to make them do the right thing. I don't care which way it goes. as long as the right thing gets done. So thank you, Steve and Amy, for having me on to participate and collaborating with you. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. At this point, we're going to open it up to questions. You can put your questions right there in the chat and I will put them out to the panel. I know you have burning questions out there, right? Or comments or observations. We're open to discussion.
Well, while we're waiting, Shabir, at 420, Melissa 420 Pills is still up, and she posted a new receipt to watch and things such as that. It's very interesting. I'll be going through this to look at it. And I think another interesting point that I haven't thought about either, you know, the 25 states that you have identified as having deaths associated with online purchases. I think unprofessionally, I don't authenticate things, but in my own mind, I think we could have all 50 states that have it. You just haven't been able to find those particular cases that you could put onto your Burgundy map. I think it's prevailing throughout our country.
I agree, and only because our mission is counterfeit medicines is the map not complete, I believe.
Right. But great work on that part.
So we have some questions. First of all, what is the number one thing that lawmakers should consider in response to drugs being sold online?
You know, Amy, we've discussed in the past, and one thing that we've discussed with legislators is, why don't we hold online social media accountable like we would do private business or anything else? Why isn't there a duty of care requirement amongst social media that would require them to at least provide that duty of care to where the public isn't placed in jeopardy or the potential of jeopardy, you know, being confronted by them? To me, it's just appalling that people seem to be able to operate with impunity and there's no consequences to it. But that's another subject and we're working with legislators right now.
I think from my point of view, I would love to see actual audit capability for some of these claims of transparency. Let me give you an example. We heard during interviews, I had law enforcement officials tell me that they made a court-ordered request for information about an active investigation and didn't hear anything for like 60 days. Now, the transparency reports would have you believe that that answer was given, but not in the time frame. They don't talk about the time frame. They're very careful not to talk about the time frame. And if you give an answer late enough, it's like no answer at all. And so I think that these transparency reports need actually some better oversight, someone looking over their shoulder who's not in the PR department trying to make them look as good as possible and minimize the harm. So we actually have some sense of if they're doing good or not, because I think a lot of them are doing just enough to say they did it, but not enough to actually be a helpful partner in solving a crime.
And at this point, I mean, they've lost the right to, I feel like as a parent, they've lost the right to police themselves. There's so much, I mean, drug trafficking, the child sexual exploitation material, the bullying. I mean, those are just the tip of the iceberg. The one thing I learned through doing this commission is how dark and deep this really goes. And that was, that shook me up, that really, we're in very scary times. And at this point, it's not getting any better. And as a society, we've expected these companies to do the right thing. At this point, we know they're not going to. We need to get in deep and fix it.
You know, I would second that. I would, when I think of the vulnerability of the people on the internet, you know, they'll kick somebody off the social media for a political post or some comment they make, but yet we know that they're allowing this content to be put on the internet and not doing anything about it. That's unacceptable. I mean, this is killing. A political comment hurts somebody's feelings. This is killing people. So I would hope they could give us at least the same standards that they give when they shut somebody down because of a statement they make, versus give us the same freedom to shut them down as well when they're trying to make a sell for profitable gain.
You're right, absolutely. And then Terry asks, are we sending the report to Snapchat and Facebook? Yeah, we'll put it out there. We'll see if we get a response. I haven't been getting a response since last year's open letter to them that went out about the same time after a couple of exchanges. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'll let you know, Terry, if they respond. And then Perla put out that she started forwarding accounts to the LA DEA tips at dea.gov since the platforms weren't doing anything. So that's something that you can do. And then again, we do know after talking with law enforcement that if we sent in all the tips, that they would never get to all of them. It would be too overwhelming at this point. Sorry, cat number 2 joining us.
Like the cat. You know, Amy, that's a good point that you just brought up. It would be overwhelming, you're right. And we've all looked at that. But the information is so critical. And you don't want to, as a law enforcement investigator, you don't want to just pick and choose, but there's such critical information out there. And right now, I don't think we have to worry about being overwhelmed with the information because they're not giving it.
Okay, well, let me ask you. So, and for example, when we do report it and they do remove it, how does that impede your work, or does it impede your work?
Well, what I would submit to that is going back to just a few comments ago, and in that trying to get this information, what's going to force these platforms to give us that information? If you look back in time, especially DEA could reference this, and others in law enforcement, there was a time when banks were very resistant to give us information. Phone companies were extremely resistant to give us the information. We fought through that with the FCC and other organizations, FTC perhaps. And I think that's where Congress can put the pressure on. Unfortunately, you've got to get someone willing in Congress to step up to the plate. Now, I would hope that Speaker of the House Schumer, by his comments on Sunday, he's obviously accepting, or at least admitting that we have a problem. And I hope he builds on that. I truly do. I think that's a step in the right direction. But it's going to take powerful people like that to get the pressure on these people, because once that information is gone, and you guys all know this, that information disappears so quickly. It's gone, and we can't further our investigation to get to that person who literally, whether you send it by U.S. Postal Service or you send it in some other manner, that person caused the death of that individual if they knowingly sent that person fentanyl.
I'd like to also add that I think that the inability to take the feed of the suspicious activities that have been confirmed as drug selling should only be a temporary impediment, right? I don't know if it's the DEA or another organization, but there's clearly enough intelligence and IT expertise in the law enforcement side of the federal level to be able to take a feed of this material and then route it to the right individuals, even if it's just stored for future investigations. It should be possible, right? We're talking about things that start life as electronic anyway, so it should be not hard to archive them electronically for future investigations. And you can have a debate about what gets archived, what rises to the level of criminal activity, and you can have a debate about how long you archive it. But without a doubt, any one of the examples on the cover of this report, which I'd like to point out are all examples of drug selling on social media that we found for that report cover, every single one of those could easily be sent electronically to a law enforcement agency and archived for 6 years, let's say, as an example. There's no reason that couldn't be there and available for investigators. And what a treat it would be if it turns out to be useful in an investigation that somebody wasn't expecting.
Yes, and Shabir, that brings up an interesting point when you get the pushback that, well, you're putting this information out and maybe this person isn't guilty, this person isn't involved. We understand that in law enforcement. It's called due process, right? We have due process in place. And so I think that argument goes out the window because we're able to adjust to that and say, obviously people have the right to be secure in their homes and to have due process, and the judicial system is built for that. But if that information's gone, we can't get it. And that's what they want us. They want us to be in this position. And back to what, also that overwhelming amount, yeah, we don't have the resources, but we need the tools. And what you're explaining there are the tools to give us a little bit of a leg up where we have the information at hand. If we can pull it, we connect the dots, connect the nexus of these criminal organizations and individuals, and try to hold them accountable for what they're doing.
You know, Shabir, you brought up earlier about the online activities of the cartels and things such as that. If people are interested in that, one of the best interviews we did have was with Dr. Nelda Garcia, who's out of Texas A&M University. She's done advanced and very thorough research associated with the marketing and recruitment efforts that the cartels are using in the social media platforms. In reality, it's absolutely frightening that the lengths that these people go to, and the public needs to know that part of it also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We'll take more questions, you guys. We've answered everything up to this point. All right. If you don't have any further questions, I just want to put out basically a call to action, if that's okay, if no one has any objections. You can't stop me. You can't stop me if you do. Parents, we need your stories. You know, if your family, your child, anyone you know has been harmed through social media, let's talk about it. Let's figure out a way to get your story out there. I can help you with that. Reach out to me. My contact info is right there on the screen. For the media, we need to start reporting this other side of the social media. We keep talking about, here's what social media is doing. Here's what social media is doing. Let's get out there and talk about what they're not doing. Please, we need your help in this. You know, we know that these companies don't change from the inside. It takes those outside pressures. And law enforcement, you know, I know there's things that you can't say or get out to the media because of your professional position. Steve and I are right here. Let us be your mouthpiece. We can help you with that. What advice do you have for us, fentanyl awareness parents, advocates, educators, when a drug dealer friend requests you? Interestingly enough, I have not had that happen yet. I just have them show up, right? They kind of just show up in my social media space. It's tough because do we report them or do we keep them on there? If it were me and I had a drug dealer friend request me, I would take it, I would go there and get as many pictures and information off their platform as I could to show recent examples of what is going on. And then I would reach out to law enforcement folks that I know and be like, is this person of interest to you? And then maybe at that point I would report it if they're not. I did that and forwarded it to the tip line. Did anything happen with it, Perla? Do you know? Did they take it down? Did anything happen? I'm not getting an answer. I'll have to, oh, they replied and said they would look into it. Yeah. I mean,
this was one of the topics of discussion we actually had amongst the commission in writing the report, which was, should parents, and we ultimately decided not to make this a recommendation, but should parents be allowed to make a preservation request to the social media platforms? I still think it's a good idea. It's obviously got some complicating factors. Preservation request is a legal term. A parent is not an attorney, and it's not part of an active investigation or a case. But law enforcement has that right. So I do think you have to get over the hump of getting a law enforcement agency interested in this individual and get that preservation request sent. Of course, there is sometimes the challenge that we've been told that the platforms will then turn around and tell the person that they're subject to a preservation request or a criminal referral, which is not helpful to the right thing being done, but baby steps.
And if I may, Amy, going back to the question that was posed and you answered it, I think obviously that you just said that they said they got back to them. They're going to be looking into it. Send everything you see, send to law enforcement. Yes, we are overwhelmed, but we want the information. And I'd rather see them sending it to us first before we notify the platform, because to me, they're complicit. They're complicit with every one of these dealers. And so why would they want to cut that off for themselves? So law enforcement first needs to have it. And the preservation letter Shabir just talked about, yes, we can get prosecutors to submit that for preservation. Law enforcement can do that. But the information the American people need to, you gotta give it over to law enforcement as quickly as possible. We're not going to get everything, I can tell you. We're simply not going to get every one of them, but we need that information.
All right, we will get it to you. We get it, we will get it right, or turn it around right to our local authorities. All right.
Again, it seems to be sometimes, this whole social media mess, it gets to be something that you feel is insurmountable and it's completely overwhelming. But the efforts through this document and what we're going to present to them and what we were going to demand from them is the first step in some type of improvement, or at least getting down to the root cause of the situation, along with legislation that'll happen later on that we'll be involved in. But again, from my perspective, I can't thank everybody enough for all their efforts and what they have done as far as putting together the narrative for this this document itself. And my God, I look forward to anything that's going to be moving forward from this point.
Yeah. All right, that brings us right to our hour mark. Oh no, 40 minutes. I guess we've been doing this for 40 minutes. Sorry, I've been on here for an hour. So if that is it, please feel free to reach out. We'll answer your questions. We can talk about this. And if you're a parent and you need some help, please, 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 please do not hesitate to reach out. All right, everybody. Thank you all for being here. And we look forward to seeing where this is going. Thank you so much.